Welcome back. At the Fair of the Stock Car Races, presented by the Southern New York Racing Association, became an annual summer-long Saturday night event with huge popularity. Crowds of up to 10,000 attended weekly. We are honored to have with us tonight the voice of the Danbury Fair Race Arena, Paul Baker.
Here he is, the legend, the icon. Yay, Paul Baker.
Paul was our race announcer for many, many years.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
There it is.
On behalf of Danbury Fair President John W. Leahy, Vice President Fred Fern, and the Southern New York Racing Association, this is Paul Baker bidding you welcome to stock car racing at the Danbury Fair Race Arena, the East's most beautiful racing plant. It doesn't seem like 32 years ago that I last spoke those words at the race arena. Some of you may have been there on that last night, but I think of all of the wonderful things that happened. First of all, I guess some of you know the story, and perhaps some of you don't, as to how I got there in the first place. It was by luck. The person doing the announcing regularly had laryngitis. They called me and asked me what I would fill in for her. I had not seen the stock car races. I didn't know one driver from the other, but they asked me if I would fill in. So I used her notes and my voice and got through the night, to the point where during the winter months, Ev Pierce and Mo Conrad and Bill McCarthy came up and asked me if I would accept the job of doing the races for them for 1 year. I did, every Saturday night for 24 years. I think of the happy nights, the good races. A guy could take his wife and 2 kids to the racetrack, buy 2 tickets, have a couple of hot dogs and a beer and stuff, and pay about $12 or $13 for the night. Nowadays, you can't even go to the theater. And I think of all the good things that happened at the track. The fans and how good they were to me, and how the drivers were so good to me. And I think of the nights when we had so many nice things happen. During the spirit of 76 year, when all of the nation was celebrating 76, all the drivers' cars in the feature race carried a flag alongside their window. And Ev Pierce sang "God Bless America" as those drivers went around the track. It was one of the most impressive nights at the race arena. And I think of the night that Chick Stockwell, who was one of the racing fans, probably the most popular driver over the years, took a car. His own car had broken down and wouldn't run that night, so Chick took a car that had never did anything, qualified the car out of the consolation race, started next to last in the feature, and finished second in the main event. If it had gone 2 more laps, he'd have won the damn thing. I also think of some of the sad nights. On my birthday one year, in 1979, Teddy Abbott was killed in a freak accident, the only fatality that we had at the track. Al Liddell died on the track, but he was stricken, pulled his car up, and he died on the track. But Teddy was killed in a freak accident. The last words he spoke on this earth, he had an interphone in connection with mine in the booth. And he called up every night of the races. The last thing he would say, he turned to me at the interphone, look up at the booth and say, "Paul, remember now, it's an Armco barrier, not a fence. Have a good night, Mr. Baker." And 3 laps later, he was dead. And one of the toughest things I've ever had to do in the booth at the racetrack, whenever there was a major accident, if a person had to be taken to the hospital, we'd always say, "He's being taken to the hospital for observation." And that night, whoever was attending Teddy on the track called me on the interphone to say, "Paul, he's gone." The toughest thing I've ever had to do was get on the mic and say, "Teddy has been injured. He's being taken to the hospital for observation," knowing all the time that he was gone. But the happiest night of all was when the club chose fit to honor me in '81 before my family and my fans to give me a night at the race arena, a night that I will never forget. And I think of all the wonderful things that happened to me and how fortunate I've been to be there. And I owe so much to the Southern New York Racing Association and to the race arena. And I know as you listen to this, I've got to, before I utter my last line, I'm overwhelmed, as I'm sure you are, about this presentation that's taking place tonight. The music is fantastic. This, ladies and gentlemen, this show belongs at the Palace Theater in Waterbury or maybe on Broadway, but it belongs somewhere where thousands of people can see and hear it because it's that good. Billy, you, Jack, what a job you have done. And I'll say the one line that finishes my speech, and the expression you've heard so many times, where if you've been involved with racing and you've ever gone to any other racetrack, the thing you hear is, there'll never be another Danbury Fair race arena. Thank you very much.